I think probably the simplest way to put it, as it's been told to me, is that the church was in crisis. 3 out of the 4 pastors on the team resigned for different reasons, and the sheep were reeling as the shepherds were leaving. Just on its own, that was an incredibly difficult time for the church. There's 3 elders who were left with the staff team to try to figure out where to go from here. One of the pastors that resigned was the senior pastor. At the same time was this pandemic. Everybody in the church had got a different opinion, a different view on how it should be handled and what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. And as the 3/4 of the pastoral team had left, now sheep were leaving. And there was, as described to me, a kind of mass exodus out of the church. The 3 elders at the time met together, and at some point they made 2 decisions. Number 1, none of us are quitting. We are all on board here. We have to see this through. Number 2, let's call the GCC. A church without a senior pastor, without a primary preacher, was supplied by other GCC pastors. So it's not just one entity coming in and trying to fix a problem, but the churches coming together and supplying help and support. And of course, GCC staff were massively important in this process as well. In particular, the executive director at the time, Paul Whittingstall, came and, weekly came and met with the elders to help to triage the situation, to strategize together with them about what do we do, where do we go. The GCC helped the church find an interim pastor, and Pastor Paul Little, who came and provided steadying leadership and pulpit supply. And the elders were then able to not only figure out where do we go from here as a church, but actually start to look for a new senior pastor. So by the time I came on the scene, there was a church there that was ready to grow again. And my elders would say to me, we didn't know if the church would make it aside from the help of the GCC. One of the elders told me in the midst of all this, when the pastoral staff had left, he said, we felt as though God had abandoned us. But of course, God had not abandoned the church. And a massive part of his evident grace to Hope Niagara was the Great Commission Collective. When I first came to Hope Niagara and part of the GCC, I had previously been 16 years pastoring as a preaching pastor, lead pastor. But at that time in my life, when I look back on it, I think there were some things that I was looking for that I found in Hope Niagara in particular, and then GCC in general. I had always been in a church setting where the church was independent on its own. And in many ways, I found that to be isolating. In many ways, I found fellowship. I did make it a priority as a pastor to connect with other pastors, but oftentimes I found that was just for me. And while I was encouraged and helped, I found it difficult to translate that to the church when the support that I was having is just for me. It's good to not be alone. It's good to be together and to know you're together and to actually serve together on mission in a collective like this. Here's what I know. I know that today we're one day closer to eternity. We are one day closer to the return of Jesus Christ. There is not time to waste fiddling around, and to be part of a collective where there's a loving sense of urgency together is a priceless thing.